All right, everyone, we're back. The Kentucky Derby, it's just 8 days away, and we're getting into the silly season here where, to quote the great philosopher Allen Iverson, we're talking about practice. It's that time of the year where workouts get brutally overanalyzed. As far as workouts going into the Kentucky Derby go, it's all about context. Before we get into analyzing some of the recent workouts at Kentucky Derby horses this year, here's the kind of point that I want to make, and it involves the favorite Renegade. The Remsen Stakes is a 9-furlong graded stake race on the dirt for 2-year-olds. For a good while, it's been the longest distance graded stake race for 2-year-olds. Renegade had his training interrupted by a quarter crack going into the race last year. A quarter crack is basically just a cracked hoof. Some can be very severe, some can be minor. In the case of Renegades, it was probably minor, but it did cost him 2 workouts going into the Remsen. It cost him some training time. The eventual winner of the Remsen, the Chad Brown-trained Paladin, had 5 workouts in the month of November. Renegade just 2. They both came out of the same maiden race, and both of them went into the Remsen in their next start. Paladin went into the race the right way. 5 breezes, didn't miss any training. Renegade, the quarter crack, missed some training. And I think that is a bit of a big deal because a 2-year-old going 9 furlongs is probably more testing than a 3-year-old this time of year going 10 furlongs. So you see here it says Renegade came up with a quarter crack, and I think he was a little light on training for the Remsen. This is the owner, Lowe. I think Todd would verify that. He missed a couple of works and got tired in that race a little bit. If he hadn't been as fit as he is coming into the race, I think it would have been a different story. As far as analyzing workouts in the Kentucky Derby go, context is everything. Here are the past performances of the great Holy Bull. Very fast horse, obviously, as you could see, and Holy Bull was an excellent workhorse, but he trained very poorly going into the Kentucky Derby. I'll read you this snippet from trainer Chuck Simon's article here. It says, the bull shipped to Keeneland for the Bluegrass worked 34 flat in the morning before the race and rolled the victory with 113 Beyer. It's on to Churchill Downs for the Kentucky Derby. Normally a great AM workhorse, Holy Bull worked 6 furlongs and a moderate 114.60, and the professional clockers hated the work. The clockers said his gallop out was bad, and they all claimed several other horses worked much better that morning. The 8-5 favorite on the morning line, the Bull, opened up at 4-1 odds and held that price until big money came in from the form handicappers. Normally a great gate horse, Holy Bull broke slow and did not flash his usual brilliant early speed. He only managed to beat 2 horses in the Derby. It was a sad performance from a genuinely great horse. Many months later, Jimmy Kroll was visited by an FBI agent who questioned him about Holy Bull on Derby week. Kroll told the investigators that a few people, including Charlie Whittingham, said that they saw someone messing with his horse. Kroll claimed that Whittingham told him that someone got to his horse and gave him something, but Kroll didn't worry about it. He told Whittingham that the horse has more fans than the Pope, and people show up uninvited at his stall and give him candy all the time. The FBI agent told Kroll that the horse was given halcyon tablets by someone who worked for veterinarian Alex Hardhill. The DEA eventually filed charges against Hardhill for illegally possessing over 4,000 tablets of halcyon. Was Holy Bull really drugged the week of the Derby? Who knows? But just 3 weeks later, the Bull was entered against top older horses in the Met Mile at Belmont. He won in sensational fashion with a 136 Equibase figure and 122 Beyer figure. You see here the Met Mile 3 weeks later, grade 1 against older horses. Anyway, this is what Holy Bull's form looked like going into the Travers. He ran one of the greatest races I've ever seen in the Travers. D. Wayne Lucas had a Belmont Stakes winner, but he entered a rabbit, a pure sprinting rabbit, to hook Holy Bull in the lead in the race. Holy Bull turned back the rabbit Comanche Trail and held off Concern in the stretch. Concern went on to win the Breeders' Cup Classic later that year. But the whole point of this, we're just looking for context. Holy Bull, very fast horse, always worked well, turned in a very poor work the week of the Derby, and that's a genuinely bad sign. A lot of these Derby workouts get massively overanalyzed. It's kind of silly season. When a horse who's typically a real good workhorse turns in a real flat work, you do have to take note of that. The extreme opposite case, a Holy Bull going into the Derby, would be last year's Derby winner Sovereignty. Sovereignty ran several good prep races for the Derby at Gulfstream Park over the winter last year, but he turned in several dull workouts. We'll watch him. This is Sovereignty on the outside of a then maiden Chillax. Chillax is, 1 for 10 lifetime now, but at the time just had one bad maiden race. And watch Sovereignty in this workout. I believe this is one of the workouts where they go to the whip on him. They're pushing him and shoving him to try to get by this maiden Chillax. I do believe this exercise rider will resort to the whip on Sovereignty if this is the workout I remember. And we covered this extensively last year. So you see Sovereignty on the outside here. He's really going to get pushed on to try to keep up with this maiden. I do believe you're going to see the rider go to the whip on him. He's just pushing him right now. It's kind of hard to see, but still pushing and shoving on Sovereignty just to try to keep pace with this maiden Chillax. I mean, the rider's all over him. He has to be pushed and shoved just to get on even terms. And, Sovereignty had workouts like this, all winter. So going into last year's Kentucky Derby, Sovereignty just started training so much better. And as I mentioned last year when I picked Sovereignty to win the Kentucky Derby, what gave me confidence into thinking that he was going to run a much improved race in the Derby is that he was training very good going into the Derby, whereas he was kind of training like a bum going into some of them prep races in Florida last year. When you're analyzing these workouts, it is all about context. As far as the raw times go for workouts, don't really mean much. There's just, again, so much context involved with that. Here's Maximum Security's work tab going into the Kentucky Derby. Half mile at Palm Meadows, 53-4. 3 furlongs at Palm Meadows, 42 seconds. On April 13th, a half mile and 54-4. Obviously the slowest of 51 horses to work the distance that morning. March 22nd, the slowest of 64 horses to work that morning. And those workout times were just a product of how Jason Servis trained. His workouts were basically quick open gallops and nothing more. All of Jason Servis horses had workout times like that. I mean, it's just a product of how he trained. On the other end of it, you'll get some real fast times. Hard Spun worked 57 4/5 going into the Kentucky Derby. That's an extremely fast time. And he was a horse that had a trainer, Larry Jones, who weighed about 180 pounds and would get on him in the morning all the time. A jockey that I actually had during my time as a jockey agent, Mario Pino, was on Hard Spun for that 57-4 workout. When you train, when you're used to training with a 180-pound guy on your back, and you got a 115-pound rider, and when working as a jockey agent, as I did for 10 years, you learn a lot about workouts. Every day you'll have trainers contacting you, setting up times for workouts. They'll ask, can I get Mario Pino at 7 and 7:30? You set the jockey schedule, you go to the barns in the morning, and you do pay attention to workouts. You pay attention to the feedback the riders get. You get to know the training patterns that the trainers use, and basically the intentions that they have for the workout. At the end of the day, though, as that great philosopher Allen Iverson said, it is just practice. Too much gets made of it. Here's a horse named Masochistic. If you've seen Breaking Bad, you'll recognize the stable name of the owner there. But Masochistic is a horse that a sharp trainer, A.C. Avila, attempted a betting coup with on Kentucky Derby Day. In Masochistic's career debut on March 15th of 2014, he was entered in a Calbred maiden special weight race, and Masochistic ran his race that day with a mild tranquilizer, Ace Promazine. I believe he was 40 times over the limit. It was just unfortunate for A.C. Avila that he happened to get specialed. I don't know if people are familiar with how drug testing works in horse racing, but the winner of each race gets drug tested, and they have what they call a special. The stewards will pick one horse out of every other race that gets specialed and get drug tested. So if you have an 8-race card, you're going to have the 8 winners get drug tested and 4 randoms. At least that's how they did it at mid-level tracks. Maybe at Santa Anita they might pick one a race or something. And just real bad luck for A.C. Avila that they happened to pick Masochistic as a special. Had to get drug tested after the race for this 5th place performance here. And that's where they found the tranquilizer. But he came back in the Kentucky Derby undercard in 2014. And, they tried to hide how good he was. But He won his maiden special weight race there by 14 lengths that day, got a good number, was bet to 2-1. And obviously the reason why you'd pick Kentucky Derby Day as a day to pull a betting coup off like this is because that's when all the money is. There's people betting that day. The pools are big. You can make larger bets. You can get big bets offshore. But the whole reason I'm talking about Masochistic, it's very unusual to see a horse actually race with the Trank. But trainers have things that they can use in the morning if they want to dull a horse's speed a little bit. And the reason why they would use it, say you have a nice maiden, but he's not quite nice enough to be real competitive in a maiden special. You might want to run him for a maiden claiming tag, but you're kind of worried that he might get claimed. In instances like that, they'll give him something. They'll give him something where the horse won't work as good going into the race. And really all you're trying to do is just not get the horse claimed. Nothing more nefarious than that. But anyway, context is key. Here is Commandment's clocker reports going into the Florida Derby. He was a horse that had a lot of B grades, not a real strong workhorse. I've watched all these workouts, but we'll go with the clocker reports here to keep this video from getting too long. Commandment had a couple of B grades from the clockers going into the Fountain of Youth, stepped up to a B plus going into the Florida Derby. We'll watch Commandment's April 17th workout right now, and he's working in company with a maiden. And this maiden here is entered in a maiden special weight race at Churchill Downs this weekend. I believe the race is Saturday or Sunday, but you got Commandment breaking off about a length behind on the outside. And I got to be honest, this breeze here kind of kept me, this breeze here just kind of left me, wanting more. I was hoping to see more from Commandment, in this breeze, and you see him on the outside here. Nothing wrong with the time. 59-3 is a good time. Maybe you got to tip your cap off to this maiden. This maiden that's 9-2 in the morning line. Maybe he's going to run a good race in this upcoming maiden special weight race. But you see Commandment on the outside there. What I would have liked to have seen him do in this work is just get by on the gallop out. But again, Commandment's just he's not a superstar workhorse by any stretch of the imagination. It took him forever to get a B plus grade, and he's not really being asked for a whole lot here. The horse on the inside looks like it's being asked just a little bit more. But Commandment is a far, far superior horse to this maiden. And right here, I'd just like to see him poke his head in front. But if you do watch his Florida workouts, he's the kind of horse that leaves you wanting a little bit. And I don't know, maybe that's why he's getting passed around by jockeys. I mean, these jockeys are passing him around like, beer cans on the 4th of July. I believe this is going to be his third different jockey and, fourth different jockey in the last 5 races. But Commandment, it's not how they, as Allen Iverson says, it's not how they practice, it's how they play. So how should a handicapper interpret that Commandment work? If you wanted to, you could actually spin that Commandment breeze in a positive way. He was never actually a good workhorse. The time was fine. He did just enough. Why not save that energy for the race? But for me and my money, when I see him training, I like to feel like I got a loaded gun there. With Commandment and that breeze, I wasn't so much as seeing like a loaded gun. I was seeing like a poker player that didn't want to show you his hand. You want to peek at the hand and you want to see aces, but from that workout, I think Commandment, is not showing his hand. But as someone who has spent 10 years, at the track in the mornings watching horses train, a lot of these good route closers will train like that. They'll be like that. They'll look like that in workouts, and then they'll just go out and run their race. And a lot of times they'll have good long careers. They're just cool customers. So Commandment's workout is one that I'll point out that just kind of left me wanting a little more. If that workout is going to impact my betting opinion in any way, the only way I think it will so much is, the workmate there, that maiden. I might give him a look in that maiden special weight race he's in where he's 9-2 on the morning line. I think Brad Cox is putting Rat Ortiz on the horse. I think they had to be kind of high on how he did with Commandment there. But boy, I would have just loved to seen Commandment, work like a loaded gun. Because he wasn't exactly the best workhorse in Florida, and he did step his game up a little training into the Florida Derby, and I'd have loved to have seen a tremendous workout there, but that's not what it was. That was kind of more of those Commandment workouts, like how he trained going into the Fountain of Youth. One horse that certainly is training well into this race is Chief Wallaby for Bill Mott. You see, he also had a B grade on March 13th, stepped up to a B plus in his final workout for the Florida Derby. And I thought he had a real impressive workout in blinkers the other day. Chief Wallaby is kind of giving you the loaded gun vibe going in. Besides Chief Wallaby, there's a couple of other horses who kind of have that loaded gun look going into the race. I liked what I saw from Further Ado in his workout. I like what I saw from Emerging Market. Golden Tempo, a horse at Keeneland, he impressed me in his workouts. I think he's training better. But analyzing these workouts this year, there's no real extreme situation like Holy Bull where a horse is just, usually a freak in the morning and is just turning in some terrible work. And there's certainly no situation like there was with Sovereignty last year where a horse who is usually a very, very poor workhorse is turning in a very impressive work. The horse who I would say got the stiffest workout going into the Derby, we'll watch him now. That's the Bob Baffert trained Potente. This horse was the favorite in the Santa Anita Derby, finished second in the Santa Anita Derby. You see him on the outside of Cash Call right now. Cash Call's a graded stakes winning filly, older graded stakes winning dirt filly for Baffert. Potente on the outside here, he actually got outworked by Crude Velocity going into the Santa Anita Derby. I wouldn't make too much of that because Crude Velocity sure looks like an extremely talented horse, but Potente got a real stiff, strong work here. And, this is Baffert not messing around. Baffert really put it to Potente in this workout, and, he brings him over there fit. But you see Potente coming to Cash Call on the outside here. And Cash Call gets kind of eased up a bit, but Potente goes out. The track wasn't very fast this morning. I thought this was a pretty stiff work here. You're going to see Potente go by here. Again, though, Cash Call under a pretty strong hold inside of him. Potente levels out nice, and if there's a horse that got a real strong workout in this race, and you could interpret that as a positive or a negative, however you want to interpret that. But Baffert's taking off the gloves here. As far as the Derby favorite Renegade and how he's training going into this race, he's been working with a horse named Power Shift, who ran second to Emerging Market in that Tampa Bay Downs maiden race. A very strong second. Power Shift, a good workhorse. And those Renegade Power Shift breezes, they just look like typical Todd Pletcher breezes. Nothing discouraging at all about him, nothing to write home about either, though. But as far as Renegade goes, he's certainly going into the Derby a lot better than he went into the Remsen Stakes. But anyway, to sum up my analysis of what I've seen from workouts so far, Commandment's a horse I like a lot on paper. He did kind of leave me wanting a little bit in his breeze. He's not exactly a sharp workhorse. That Santa Anita Derby winner's so happy. They actually have blinkers on him in the morning. I believe he races without blinkers and trains in blinkers. He's another horse that's had some uninspiring breezes before, but I've watched his breezes. He's kind of training like So Happy trains. He's not setting the world on fire or anything. And like I said, as far as the horses, I'll give a slight positive to Chief Wallaby, Further Ado, Emerging Market, Golden Tempo. I've kind of liked what I've seen from them. Nothing that's going to change my opinion about them too much. So that is my analysis of the workout so far. And again, as that great philosopher Allen Iverson said, practice. We're talking about practice here. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.